Hey everybody, we're back here at Red Rocks Race and Sportsbook for the Sports Betting Podcast. Bookends powered by STN Sports. As usual, he's Jason, I'm Chucky, and we're here to break down all the football for you. We're going to start a little college football first, and we were going to highlight this with UNLV and the success, getting off to a 3-0 start, being in the top 25, the coaches' top 25, coming off a bye week, starting conference play, but massive change at quarterback for UNLV.
Yeah, shocking news that Sluka has decided to essentially withdraw or take himself out of the UNLV program over, again, what is alleged lack of paying him his funds or his NIL money. And again, probably could have a full hour conversation of what this means to college football and how this is going to transcend through college football to see a player essentially believe he has a higher worth than what he's getting right now from an NIL
But he's not the only guy, of course.
Yeah.
We see it.
We're going to. He's going to be the first, and we're going to see this a lot of times. And remember, this is a quarterback that was a 4-year starter at Holy Cross, transferred to UNLV, is in his 5th and final year, is most likely not an NFL talent. So this is his last year to essentially get paid, get that NIL money. He's probably not getting what he believes he's worth. He decides to now redshirt because he hasn't played the 5 games that you're required to play before you can redshirt the season, in hopes that he can go get more money than he's getting from the UNLV program
next year. Right.
And with the big wins over Houston and Kansas on the road, the likelihood that he does believe that he can get some NIL money from another program next year is probably very, very high. And as much as you are disappointed that he walks away from the UNLV program with what they've done so far this year, it's hard to be disappointed in the kid taking advantage of what is the college football setup of NIL money and redshirting a year so that he can get paid again next year. And again, he's seen the visibility of. In the NFL, just this season, we had Jamar Chase sit out his preseason. We had CeeDee Lamb sit out this preseason. So the precedent at the level above to, hey, I'm not getting the money that I want to get to play. Let me sit out and hold out for more money is essentially what this young man is doing, is saying, hey, I'm not getting the money that I feel like I'm worth. Let me sit out this season and see if I can get more money next season. Again, bad precedent. Most of us are enraged by it. But again, you can't fault the kid because he's got one chance as a 5th-year senior to go get paid, and he doesn't believe he's getting the money that he's worth.
Well, outside of what his view is, what's the impact to the game and to the number? And that's what I think the really important thing is. Here, UNLV opened up a 3.5-point favorite against Fresno, was bet up to 4. Of course, when that news broke late last night, took the game down, put it back up at pick. So you're talking about at least a 4-point difference right now. His backup is another transfer from the portal, Malik Williams, who played at Campbell, had great success at Campbell, threw for over 2,500 yards, I think 25 touchdowns, 70% completion record. But now he's got to step up and run this UNLV program that is a top 25. They play Fresno here. They've got an easier game. Then they have games against Oregon State on the road and Boise they host here, who's also a top 25 team. So a lot of pressure on the quarterback now, Williams, for UNLV, and a big adjustment in the line. And who knows if we see this game go up or actually Fresno become the favorite before kickoff.
Yeah, and I think we could actually see 2 quarterbacks at work. I think Cameron Friel and Malik Williams could both potentially get in the games as Odom kind of tries to figure out which guy is better. And Sluka hadn't had a ton of success through the air. A lot of his success was running the football and on the ground, his ability to scramble. This is a very, very difficult, tough test when Fresno State. And I've actually, as much as we opened UNLV at 3.5 and they moved to 4, I actually thought Fresno State should have been favored in the game from the outright. And so we saw UNLV drop to a 1-point favorite after the quarterback breaking news. We made him a pick again in an over adjustment to the Fresno State side. We've in a sense been bet to UNLV -1. I do think Fresno State's a very, very good team. I think a 12-30 game, and I do believe that this quarterback shakeup.
Well, what's UNLV's psyche?
Has a whole mental state on the whole team. It might even bond them together closer and rally a rally cry even more.
We will see.
But again, the talent on the field will dictate the results. But again, it is a very, very interesting matchup Saturday, 12:30 here at Allegiant Stadium.
Yeah, we've talked about it in the past that usually in pro football, when you see a major quarterback shift, that it can be anywhere from 6 to 7 to 8 points. So this is kind of a 4-point adjustment right now in this game. We're still a few days away from kickoff, so we'll see what the impact is. A couple of interesting betting trends, Jay, this one. Fresno State 5-0 straight up in their last 5 games when playing UNLV. The total has gone over in 4 of the UNLV's last 5 games when playing Fresno. And as we talked about kind of all last season toward the end and the beginning of this season, UNLV's been point spread darlings, 12-4 against the number of their last 16 games. So we'll see how it kind of transpires here. But again, early action was clearly on UNLV, went from 3.5 to 4. Now the adjustment is pick.
Yeah, and the UNLV defense, make no mistake, the game against Houston, the game against Kansas, those were won on the defensive side of the football. To be able to stop those 2 programs, Kansas again, or Houston again making the coaching change, that was their first game. They kind of went in there and stole that game as they were trying to figure out that offense. Houston has since gotten a little bit better. Kansas was really an amazing upset. So walk in there and play defense the way they did, shut down Jalen Daniels the way they did was really impressive. That's what they're going to need to do again here. Obviously, the change of quarterback is going to lead to potentially a little bit more struggles on the offensive side of the football. They're going to need a big stand-up defensive effort. So if you're looking for UNLV to win this game, parlaying it to the under might be a good idea. UNLV to the under, because the only way that they stay in this game is to have another big defensive effort.
Yeah, they're going to really need that big time as you go into conference play, and you've got some big games coming up. Syracuse, Oregon State, Boise, including this game. They've got a pretty big stretch for the next 5 weeks. Now we're going to talk about arguably the marquee game in college football. Can't believe these 2 schools are playing in September, and that's Georgia going to Alabama. Georgia, only 2 losses over the last several years, both times against Alabama. They go into Tuscaloosa as a very small favorite, a 2-point favorite here. But wow, this is just a huge game for both these 2 programs early in the season.
Yeah, both teams coming off the bye week. I think the line is a little bit shorter than we may have expected because Kentucky really struggled in that game, or Georgia really struggled in that game at Kentucky.
No touchdowns in that game.
Where we saw them kind of sneak out with a win at Kentucky, who had lost both their games and didn't look like a program. Georgia was a 25-point favorite in that game and struggled. And we've seen Alabama really kind of be impressive in their wins. Again, dominated Western Kentucky, go to Wisconsin with a big win. So they've been really, really good. Jalen Monroe, from a quarterback standpoint, he's vaulted himself up that Heisman Trophy race with the fact that he's thrown multiple touchdown passes and multiple touchdown runs in each of his 3 starts. So again, Kalen DeBoer, new head coach, taking over for Nick Saban. All the stuff is there from an Alabama standpoint of home game. DeBoer can kind of erase the Nick Saban comparisons by going and knocking off Georgia in this situation. Jalen Monroe can jump himself to a Heisman Trophy favorite with a win over this Georgia defense. Carson Beck on the other side. We saw the struggles against Kentucky. What can he do at Alabama? So again, this you talk about the college national championship in September. This has got it written all over it. The winner of this game vaults themselves to the top of the SEC, vaults themselves to the national championship, ranked number 1.
But they may see each other again.
Yes, and then you have this long road of trying to get back through the SEC, and obviously watching what Texas does, watching what Ole Miss does, watching what Ohio State does. So the loser of this game, because it's so early in the year, is going to be able to kind of chase and put themselves in a situation to be back in the playoff at the end of the year, while the winner of this game is going to feel the pressure of the world to finish out the stretch.
Well, one of these 2 schools hasn't given up a touchdown this year, and that's Georgia. And one of these 2 schools hasn't been a dog at home in 17 years, and that's Alabama. So something has to give here. Last time they were a dog was 2007 at home. Not sure if this number switches at all. We've seen the number come down a little bit industry-wide. Right now it sits at 2, but kind of an interesting kind of trend there. A few betting kind of highlights to look at. Georgia 24-1 straight up in their last 25 games. They're 13-1 straight up in their last 14 road games. Bama 5-0 straight up in their last 5 home games. And Bama 14-1 straight up in their last 15 games. So some big-time trends that favor both schools right now. Very small number, but again, Bama hasn't been a home dog in 17 years, guys. They come into this one now getting less than a field goal.
And this will be our match of the day on Saturday, so take advantage of that 10% odds boost on this game. If you haven't gotten on the app, you get that 10% odds boost. You still can get the $250 no-worry wager by signing up on the app. So this week, a great reap. If you don't have the app yet, Georgia, Alabama, 10% odds boost, $250 no-worry wager. A lot of stuff sitting there waiting for you on this big college matchup on Saturday.
All right, so check all the stuff out on College Football Saturday, as Jay mentioned. Look at the app. There's so many great games, but these are kind of the two that kind of stood out as we got into the college segment. We're going to come right back on Bookends, and we're going to jump right into pro football for Week 4. And everything we thought we knew going into the season, we don't know anything. So we'll break that down when we come back, guys.
Do you want it all? Easy-to-use app with great odds? Seats that make you feel like you're at the game? The friendliest, most helpful team members this side of Lake Mead? Sure, some places have this and that, but if you want it all, it's at STN Sports. Download the STN Sports app now.
Hey gang, we're back at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook for the sports betting podcast Bookends. Now we're going to talk a little pro football, and as I touched on before, everything we thought we knew coming into the season, we don't know. I mean, it's a crazy year. Three weeks in, the largest underdog on the board has won all 3 weeks. Not just covered, but won the game outright. We had big underdogs win this week. You had the Broncos win outright. You had the Panthers win outright. You had the Rams win outright. You had the Commanders win outright. So
the Giants,
all these big dogs are coming in. And you look at teams there's 5 teams that are undefeated. I don't think anybody really had penciled in that the Seahawks and Vikings would be 2 of those teams. And then you look at the teams that are 1 and 2, the 49ers, the Cowboys, the Ravens, all teams that we had penciled in to be playing in February. So a lot of parity right now. A lot of stuff seems to be upside down. I think it's the lack of preseason for a lot of these guys. They're just not playing any of the star players. And you've got an abundance of young quarterbacks that have really struggled. I know Jaden Daniels played really well on Monday night. Caleb Williams has had some struggles, but his yardage has gone up in every game from less than 100 to less than 200 to over 300. So maybe he's turned the corner a bit. But this league right now is really, it's crazy. There's just a lot of parity going in. And who's the biggest dog on the board Week 4?
The Patriots.
And they were the ones Week 1 who went into Cincinnati and won outright.
But you speak about just the parity in the league and setting these point spreads and touchdown favorites. And I've talked about it for years, and I talk about it every week when we talk about college football, of looking for these money line dogs that are 7-point underdogs, taking them on the money line because it comes to fruition every week. We watch these money line dogs win. And the NFL, it wasn't as strong. You could take that 7-point favorite, and essentially that was a winning ticket for you, or you could tease it down.
Especially if you teased it down.
You could tease it down to that pick 'em, and those teams are winning. But boy, this year has been an absolute shocker for 3 weeks to watch the survivor pools just collapse, and the number of 7-point favorites that are losing on. You talked about it outright. We had another 5 last week after 8 of the favorites go down in Week 2. So again, those trends continue. We'll see if we can find those money line dogs again this week. Again, a lot more tighter point spreads, where we're seeing what used to be that 7-point favorite come down to being a 3 and 4-point favorite, because we've seen this kind of trend of the underdogs prevailing. So we'll see as we go into Week 4, if we can still find those money line dogs that are going to be able to cash.
Through 3 weeks, Jay, it's kind of flipped right now. You see home favorites are just 15, 19, and 1 against the number. I really can't remember that being the case to start a season like this. So it really is upside down a bit, but we'll see what happens as we kind of move forward. Maybe as you get into Week 4 and 5, these guys now, the first 3 weeks have kind of been their preseason. So maybe they start getting back to where we thought they would be. But it really has been a crazy season. Thursday night, you've got the Dallas Cowboys playing on the road against the New York Giants. Cowboys come off back-to-back home losses. They did not look good in that game against the Saints. Really didn't look good against the Ravens. They kind of got into it late. They had the onside kick and the score. But a loss here, and you have to believe that drumbeat's going to get a little bit loud in Big D about what do they do with Mike McCarthy. Number has gone up from 4.5 to 5.5, but the Giants with Malik Neighbors, who's become a superstar already in a very short time. I think first rookie to have 3 touchdowns in his first 3 games. At wideout, he's looked phenomenal. We'll see what happens, but a lot of pressure on the Cowboys Thursday night.
Well, and I think it's a Cowboys rush. The Cowboys rush defense is going to make the difference. We saw Kamara have the absolutely fantastic game in Week 2. We saw Derrick Henry have the great game in Week 3. Can they stop Singletary? Can they stop
I'm
the
just
Giants?
interrupt you 1 second. And you're absolutely right about that. But on the flip side, it's the Cowboys' run they haven't been able to run the ball, and they haven't been able to stop the run, as you mentioned. So we'll see how their D adapts.
Yeah, and if they can stop the run, it'll give them the ability to have a balanced offense.
Right.
When you're getting blown out, now it has to be, we can't get Dowdle and Ezekiel Elliott involved in the game because we're chasing. And so that should be a reverse scenario for them this week. The Giants are not the prolific offense that either the Ravens or the Saints are. Obviously, they got blown out by the Vikings in week 1, struggled against the Commanders in week 2, and then pulled off a great upset.
But I think they should have won that game against the Commanders. If their kicker doesn't get hurt, they probably win that game. They're 2-1 right now.
They pull a big upset and able to stop the Browns this week, so that's what's giving them life. That's what's kind of shortened that line up. This would have been a 7-point favorite for the Cowboys, but again, the Cowboys' struggles to go along with the Giants winning on the road at Cleveland is what shortened this line up. So again, I think that this is could potentially be a get-right game for Dallas, a feel-good game for Dallas where they're actually able to go put some points up, run the football, and maybe stop that Giant offense, which is not an offense that Dallas should struggle with defensively.
I agree with everything you're saying, but I think it shouldn't be a get-right game for Dallas. It has to be a get-right game for Dallas. You're playing against a team that, you're right, they should have been probably a 7-point favorite. The game did open 4.5. It has gone back up to 4.5. Looks like it might actually go a little bit higher to 5.5 to 6. But this is a game Dallas has to win. I think there's so much more pressure on Dallas. And I think a young Giant team, your division rivals, you know each other well, you can come in this game a little bit more loose because there's a lot more pressure on the Cowboys. A couple of interesting betting trends, guys, in this one. Dallas is 5-0 straight up in their last 5 games when playing the Giants. Total's gone over in 5 of the Cowboys' last 5 games. But the Giants, on the flip side, 4-1 against the number in their last 5 games at home. So they're getting points here. This number might creep up a little bit more. If it gets to that 6, maybe some value with the Giants in this one. Let's jump to another game in pro football now. We're going to look at the Vikings-Packers. Big division game. Packers come in 2-1. I think you'll probably see Jordan Love back at quarterback here. Vikings, one of the biggest surprises in all of football. Not only the way Sam Darnold's played, but that defense is lights out right now. Really competitive matchup in the NFC Central.
Yeah, and go back to week 1 when they played the Giants. That defense was really the question mark. They had so many new pieces of the puzzle and what they were going to be able to do, and they've actually stood up and absolutely fantastic. Obviously, they pulled a big upset over San Francisco in week 2 and then played great here in week 3. Now they travel to Green Bay, where we've seen this Green Bay team obviously lose to the Eagles in week 1,
right,
but play absolutely good football, especially running the football with Malik Willis. Expect Jordan Love to be back here. Expect those weapons to be back there, and expect a little bit better tests of this Vikings defense from the Packers. Obviously, the beating the Texans was a shocker because the Texans do have all those offensive weapons, but now traveling out of Minnesota to Green Bay against that divisional opponent, where Green Bay gets a little bit more of, I know what you want to do, Minnesota, so we'll see if they can go there. But again, Minnesota shouldn't be shocking anybody because they have the weapons on offense, they run that passing offense, and if they can find a way to get a lead and throw the football around, and Jalen Naylor can establish himself as a receiver outside of Jefferson, and then you can rear back with that defense and get after the quarterback. That's the success for the Minnesota Vikings, is putting the team in a must-pass situation and being able to get after them.
Well, I think that's the surprising part about the Vikings is that Jefferson, we know Jefferson's Jefferson, but he has had somewhat of a resurgence this year with Sam Darnold. He's played so well, but I think the fact that no Jordan Addison, no T.J. Hawkinson, and everybody's stepping up, like you mentioned, Naylor on that offense, that Darnold looked great. He got banged up a little bit. He should be fine in this game. We'll see if it gets to 3 or not, but this Viking team, especially on the defensive side of the ball, they're dialing up blitzes at a higher percentage than any team in the league, and Jordan Love coming back off that knee injury, how mobile will he be against this Viking defense?
Well, and that, to me, that's the key of the game. Can the Vikings stop Jacobs from running the football? Because the Packers want to run the football, and what didn't happen, the San Francisco Niners, Mason had a pretty good game against them, but they got down because they couldn't stop the Vikings. So the Niners were down, kind of had to get away from that run game. The Texans this past week were without Mixon and had to go to Akers. So again, they couldn't run the football. They had to get in that pass mode. If the Packers can stay in run mode, I think that sets up a lot of success for them because the Vikings want to force you to pass and they can take advantage of it.
Yeah, so really big NFC Central matchup. A couple of interesting betting trends here, guys. Total's gone over in 6 of Minnesota's last 8 games when playing Green Bay. Yeah, the total's gone under in 6 of Minnesota's last 9 games on the road. Green Bay 6-1 against the number their last 7 games, and 5-1 against the number their last 6 games at home. We're now going to jump into another game, Bucks against the Eagles here. Bucks come off kind of ugly wins, but a big loss. Eagles come off a couple of ugly wins. Bucks come off a big loss last week, kind of a surprising loss to Denver. So we'll see what Baker Mayfield can dial up here, but let's see what the Bucks can do against this Eagles offense that might be without A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, and Goddard just popped up an injury report. So who's actually going to be catching passes from Justin Hurts?
Yeah, the Bucks were the most disappointing loss for me in Week 3 with their loss to the Broncos, only because they had the week before gone on the road to beat the Lions,
right.
And that was a really impressive win for me. And said, hey, maybe this Bucks team is for real. So for them to really have a down week and lose to the Broncos was a shock to me. Obviously, the Eagles come off the Monday night where the Falcons pulled the upset over them with the late game comeback, and then they returned the favor to the Saints with the late game comeback against the Saints. So this Eagles team has played some really, really close games, including the Week 1 against the Packers. So they've been kind of the cardiac kids, and Tampa needs to establish an offense. So you talked about the missing guys for the Eagles. It's going to have to be Barkley. It's going to have to be Hurts with that running game, because the passing game could be completely missing, which could be a great thing for them if Vita Vea continues to miss games for the Bucks. He was out last week, gave the Broncos a little bit more of that running game to go with, so that'll be a big thing to look at, as well as figuring out who the running game for the Tampa Bay Bucks is. We saw Rashad White be their leading running back last year. Bucky Irving has now been the guy that is tabbed, is probably going to be their number one back. So if they can establish him and find a way to get the ball to Mike Evans, as it's been really the Chris Godwin show,
right.
They need to get Evans back in the game. So for me, this is a really kind of a game that's really tough to handicap, because we don't know who either of these teams are as of yet, and obviously some of the missing pieces from an injury standpoint play a big role in this game.
We've already seen this total start to drop a little bit, and you really wonder now, Goddard just popped up an injury report, so if they are missing all three of those guys, and you look historically of what that Eagle offense is without without A.J. Brown, I mean, they are they're a below 500 team. Hurts' passing yards dropped by almost 80 yards per game, so something to really keep an eye on. Look at the injury report, see who's going to be in and who's going to be out for the Philadelphia Eagle offense. A couple of interesting betting trends, though, with that total. Eagles total has gone under in 5 of their last 5 games on the road. Tampa has gone under in 4 of their last 5 games at home. So without all these guys and the total dropping, might be the time to get it now if you like the under in this game, guys. Another game we're going to look at now is the Chiefs-Chargers game. And the Chiefs are just, I talked about at the beginning of the show, is that whatever we expect in football, I have no idea what to expect. But the Chiefs are the one constant. They haven't scored a lot of points. Kelsey hasn't looked great, but the defense is the defense. Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. And guess what? They're one of 5 undefeated teams.
Well, and I'll add in there that the officials are the officials, because, we are a pass interference call away against Cincinnati from the Cincinnati Bengals knocking off the Kansas City Chiefs. And
a
non-pass interference call away from the Atlanta Falcons knocking off the Kansas City Chiefs, and both of those calls went the way of the Kansas City Chiefs. So they could easily be 1 and 2 if 2 calls or no calls get made. So add that to your things you need to handicap this week when looking at the Kansas City Chiefs
how exactly
or the Los Angeles Chargers.
That, but it's interesting.
The other big thing here is obviously they lose Pacheco. They have to replace him with Carson Steele and Pirine. Maybe they get Hunt into the mix this week.
He's supposed to be active for this game.
But the bigger thing is the question marks on the Chargers side, with Herbert being a question as to whether he'll be playing in this game with leaving last week's game against the Steelers.
That's not the only injury. You've got Derwin James on their defensive backfield that's suspended for a game. But to me, the biggest loss here is Joe Alt, the rookie offensive lineman who's been phenomenal this year, protecting Herbert, opening up that running game for J.K. Dobbins, who leads the league in rushing. He's probably not going to be in now. So you're going to have a Justin Herbert, if he starts, who's not going to be as mobile. On the back end, you're missing James. But for me, it's Joe Alt in that offensive line that's really going to hurt. We saw this number go up from 7 to 8 and even 8.5 in some places because how banged up the Chargers are. Really keep an eye, though, on Justin Herbert to see what his status is.
With no Alt and then having to turn to Easton Stick again, that's why you're seeing that number potentially continue to go up.
Yeah, so I mean, a couple of just minor betting trends here. Total's gone under in 5 of the Chargers' last 5 games, and 4 of the Chargers' last 5 games at home. It's gone under. So their offense is kind of a different offense than we saw maybe a year or two ago. So we'll keep an eye on those injuries and see what happens. Now we're going to look at the Sunday night football game, which I think everybody had circled on their calendar for one of the top games in the league, and that's the Buffalo Bills, the undefeated Buffalo Bills, against the 1-2 Baltimore Ravens on Sunday Night Football. Baltimore comes off that big win in Dallas. Buffalo, they haven't missed a beat. I mean, you look at the fact that they're spreading the ball around. They might not be a superstar at wideout, but everybody is kind of contributing, catching the ball. Josh Allen looks phenomenal. 4 touchdown passes on this past Monday night. The game opened 3. It has gone down to 2.5 right now. We'll see where it ultimately closes, but what a game on Sunday Night Football between the Buffalo Bills and Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, and people are going to remember what they saw last, and that's the Buffalo Bills just absolutely running through the Jacksonville Jaguars after the week that after they destroyed Miami. So you just have to wonder, the NFL is what if, who's been the best, and then bet against them the next week, and who's been the absolute worst, and take them the next week, because they just seem to find a way to rebound and balance themselves out. And the Bills, obviously after this week, you have to say, hey, this is the best team in the NFL. This is the team that's performed the best. And now they go on a road to get what is really their first test. And the Ravens are going to be waiting for that test, and coming off the big win. But again, they let that game somewhat get away from them against Dallas late in the game. Weren't able to finish that game, and so that's the question.
They did win.
They did win, but again, they were blowing them out, and then they allowed the Cowboys to kind of leap back in the game. Can Derrick Henry again be the Derrick Henry that we expect him to be? Lamar Jackson can just go take over a game from a running standpoint. But it's how do they stop Josh Allen? I mean, Josh Allen is doing this with a bunch of kind of no-name guys around him, and James Cook in the backfield. And again,
Cook's been phenomenal.
That defense has been able to get some great turnovers. So it's really just the Josh Allen show, and what do the Ravens have to do to contain Josh Allen, which no one's been able to do to this point yet.
Well, both these two teams, nobody really wants to have to go play there in January, in either Baltimore or Buffalo. A Buffalo win here, they're 4-0. Baltimore's 1-3, but really they would control tiebreakers by 4 games since winning a game here. So this is a huge game for both these two teams early in the season.
And the Ravens was the more shocking of going in and, obviously losing to Kansas City in that week 1, but it was the week 2 loss to the Raiders, who then now go in week 3 and get beat up by Carolina. So that just sits there as a question mark of what were the Ravens, or what happened to the Ravens in week 2, because obviously they come back with the big week 3 win over Dallas. So again, this is their second home game matchup after the disappointing home matchup against the Raiders. So we can see if they have that big bounce back performance here, which again, from a standpoint of where they're favored, we're expecting them to have that bounce back game.
One really interesting betting trend for this game, guys. The total has gone under in 5 of Baltimore's last 6 games when playing Buffalo. Total's 46.5. So something to really keep an eye on that when these two teams kind of go head to head. Although they both have high-powered offenses, there's not a lot of points scored.
And again, look for the props. We talk about, you guys ask about them all the time. Where's the props? Where's the props? Where's the props? This is the type of game. The menu is going to be absolutely fantastic, both on the rushing yards for Allen and Lamar, the passing yards, the touchdown passes, the rushing touchdowns, all the auxiliary weapons from the tight ends, the wide receivers. The props will be absolutely ginormous on this game.
Now we're going to jump to Monday night, and again, we have a doubleheader. It's not the doubleheader that I like, because I'd like it staggered a little bit, like a 4 o'clock start and a 7:30 start. But we've got 2 games on Monday Night Football. It was great last week, great crowds in the room, just a lot of action on those 2 games. The early game, though, the undefeated, or the winless, I should say, Tennessee Titans against the Miami Dolphins. Now, these two teams played on a Monday night late last year, where the Titans came back with 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns and pulled the upset against Miami. Game opened up pick. Miami's gone to a small favorite. Tyler Huntley looks to get the start for the Dolphins here. When you look at Will Levis, 3 straight games, 3 straight interceptions for touchdowns he's thrown. But it's a big game to Miami. I think to stay in it with the Jets now and the Bills as well as they are, this is a huge game for Miami early in the season.
UGLY. That describes our opening game for Monday Night Football. But the best part about
Not if you're a fish fan.
somebody still has to win. So you can cash a ticket on one of these sides. You could cash a ticket on the total, but boy, this game is really, really difficult to look at. Again, Dolphins missing their quarterback. Titans are a turnover machine. But again, they've been leading in these games, and they found ways to blow it. So something's got to bend here, and we'll see what happens. But this is one of the uglier games on the schedule.
I mean, you look at the Miami's offensive stats last week against Seattle, and
if you have a fantasy guy that has Hill or
Waddle,
A-Chain or Waddle, you don't want to talk about their fantasy.
Well, that's why I'm
stats.
talking about it, because I have two of those guys. And I mean, you just look at that offense, and the struggles on that offense is how long do they go with the current quarterback situation? I keep thinking about one guy who was traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers, isn't starting, and he's not due a lot of money because Denver's still paying him. Is that how would Russell Wilson fit with that Seattle team or with that Miami team? And is Jimmy Garoppolo another name that's out there? So I have to think Miami is looking at other quarterback options. I still think Russell Wilson makes a lot of sense for that team. But here's a couple of betting trends to look at in this one. Total's gone under in 9 of Tennessee's last 11 road games, and the total has gone under in 5 of Miami's last 5 home games. So with the lack of offense, a much lower total than you would normally see if you had Tua in here. Start looking at that total because it might start to plummet a bit.
Yeah, and my response again into looking at the outside quarterbacks, I don't think the Dolphins have given up on Tua yet. I think that they've gone with these backup guys because there's still a sense that maybe Tua can return.
He's still a hit away at any time if he comes back.
With all due respect to whatever the organization is thinking, I think Tua just needs to take a step away from the game. But you talked about it. Russell Wilson would be an interesting. I don't know if the Steelers give him up just because Fields is a running ball and they've got something going with them being 3-0. Jimmy G is sitting there as a question mark. And you talked about Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill still eventually is out there as a free agent. Could he be brought in as a guy, as a veteran that could get the ball out quickly to Waddle and Hill and maybe still have some semblance of a team? But Tyler Huntley might not be that bad. Tyler Huntley's had some decent. He's been able to win games as a backup for the Ravens. He can run the football. He does know how to deliver a quick ball. So I think that there could be some success there. The bad part about it is that line hasn't had a lot of success as they got Tua knocked out, and then they got Skylar Thompson knocked out, and they got Boyle knocked out.
Yeah, but Tua didn't get knocked out on a sack. He got knocked out on a scramble.
He was scrambling for his life because he was being attacked. But, that Dolphin line is really what's got to be shored up to be able to get those balls to those dynamic wide receivers.
Again, just wonder how long, if Huntley doesn't have success, how long it does take before Miami kind of looks or explores a trade. The second game on Monday Night Football, the surprising Seahawks at 3-0. Maybe not surprising because they've beaten Miami without Tua. They beat New England and Denver. So not exactly the top teams in the league, but you still beat the teams that are in front of you. They're 3-0. They play Detroit, who's 2-1. Detroit had a big road win against Arizona last week. Game opened up 4.5. It's actually come down a bit. So you guys are showing a little bit of love for Seattle in this one, but really kind of an interesting Monday night game where you could see a lot of points scored between these two schools.
Yeah, and I love
these two teams.
I love the fact that these games aren't staggered on Monday night, so I don't have to sit through the Dolphins and Titans, and we get to turn into Seattle.
He's hurting you, Fish fans.
Seattle and Detroit right away. And you talked about, Seattle has done what they're supposed to do with the teams that are in front of them. I believe they're walking into a completely different place than what they've seen these first these weeks. So if you like the Lions, I would take them now. Get in the car, get on the app, bet the Lions now at this number, because by the time this game gets to Monday night, you're not going to see these 4 and 4.5s anymore. This game is going to be 5, 5.5 as the public starts to play the Lions.
You can see 3.5 maybe.
I think this is a get well game for the Lions. I saw a turnaround in that defense, and what they discovered in that defense was if we can go and attack the quarterback, and we can control a Kyler Murray in Arizona, that's going to be their recipe moving forward, is to get after these guys. And the running game for Seattle, the line for Seattle should not be able to push around the defensive front for the Lions at all. And that Lions offensive front, this Lions running game of Montgomery and Gibbs is going to dominate that Seattle offensive front.
I think it's two teams that are fun to watch. You look at Geno Smith with that offense with JSN and DK Metcalf and either Walker or Charbonnet at running back. They've been fun to watch so far, so you could see a lot of points scored. A couple of interesting betting trends here, guys. Seattle 5-0 against the number their last 5 games when playing Detroit. Detroit 4-1 against the number in their last 5 games. So a little bit something has to give here as well.
Yeah, and remember, they lost their last home game to Tampa. So again, another chip on the shoulder for that Lions team. We know Dan Campbell, and we know how he riles those guys up. when you lose your last home game and now get to play a chance home game on Monday
Night Football, right.
And the number of times the Detroit Lions have been on national TV outside of Thanksgiving Day is slim to none. So this is a huge opportunity for this Lions program to take a big jump.
And real quick, we talked about kind of the amount of underdogs that have won and covered. Last man standing contest is down to 639 contestants in pro football. I can't remember, Jay, it ever dropping that dramatically over 3 weeks.
Well, I mean, it speaks to the fact that we've had all these upsets with outright dogs winning games. Not only in the pro game, we're seeing it in the college as well, where we've seen that contest be depleted very, very quickly. And it's sports in general. You talk about college football, you talk about pro football, we talk about Major League Baseball right now. We're down to these pennant races. We've got kind of 3 teams fighting for 2 spots in the American League. We've got 3 teams fighting for 2 spots in the National League. We've got the Padres chasing the Dodgers for that division.
Right.
We've got the Phillies and Dodgers and Padres chasing for
the Mets trying to hold off the Braves.
The best record in the league. So again, check out the daytime baseball, the baseball that's going on. Absolutely fantastic with these races. We've got the WNBA playoffs going on with some
Aces Liberty again for the 3rd straight year.
Some fantastic games that are going on there. We've got some UFC fights, and for you VGK fans, hockey is back. The preseason is underway. The regular season is just a week or 2 away here. So check out the app for everything that's going on from an NHL standpoint. NBA is a little bit later in October, but again, we're filling up the menu from the NBA standpoint. Look for the awards, the MVPs, the Hart trophies in hockey, all that stuff being added to the menu. So again, if you don't have the app, get the app. The menu is exploding, and we still have that $250 no-worry wager out there for you as well.
What are you guys waiting for? $250. No worry. You've got, as Jay mentioned, VGK. NBA's not that far away. Baseball postseason. All these great football games coming up. Come on, get on into one of our racing sports books. Get signed up for STN Sports. So for he's Jason, I'm Chucky for the Sports Betting Podcast. Bookends powered by STN Sports. We will see you guys next week. Don't forget, check out those big moneyline dogs in pro football.